Sometimes the person who saves you isn't the one you're supposed to marry, it's the friend who holds you together when everything falls apart. The rain was hitting my window pretty hard that Tuesday night. I remember it clearly because I was trying to focus on this design project that was due the next morning. But the sound kept breaking my concentration. It was almost 2 a.m., and I was sitting at my desk with my laptop, drinking my third cup of coffee and wondering why I always leave things until the last minute. My apartment wasn't anything fancy, just a small place downtown with thin walls and a heater that made weird noises. But it was mine, and after breaking up with my girlfriend 3 months ago, I was finally getting used to living alone again. Well, not completely alone. My roommate Jake worked night shifts at the local hospital, so most evenings I had the place to myself. I was deep into working on a logo design when I heard the front door open. The sound was so quiet I almost missed it over the rain and my music playing softly in the background. I figured Jake was coming home early from his shift. Sometimes he got off work around this time if things were slow at the hospital, but something felt different about the footsteps. They were lighter, more careful, like someone trying not to wake anyone up. Jake usually came in making noise, dropping his keys on the counter, opening the fridge. These footsteps were moving slowly through the apartment, almost like they knew exactly where they were going. I kept working, thinking maybe Jake brought someone home. He did that sometimes, though he was usually pretty good about texting me first. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door and I could see a shadow under the crack. Then I heard a very soft knock. When I looked up from my screen, my bedroom door was slowly opening. At first I couldn't see who it was because the hallway light was off. Then she stepped into the light from my desk lamp and I was completely shocked. It was Maya, Jake's younger sister. I'd known her since college when Jake and I first became friends. She was always around, sometimes joining us for movie nights or group dinners. She was one of those people who could make everyone laugh without even trying. But right now she looked nothing like the happy, confident person I knew. Her hair was soaking wet from the rain and her clothes were damp and sticking to her. She had a small bag in her hand, the kind you might pack for a weekend trip. But what really got my attention were her eyes. They were red and puffy like she'd been crying for hours. Her whole face looked exhausted and sad in a way I'd never seen before. "Maya," I said, closing my laptop. "What's going on? Are you okay?" She didn't answer right away. She just stood there looking at me like she was trying to decide something important. Then she put her bag down by my dresser and walked over to my bed. She kicked off her wet shoes, which made small puddles on my floor. I was about to ask her again what was wrong when she pulled back my covers and got into my bed. Not in a weird way or anything like that. She just slid under the blankets and lay down on her side, facing away from me. Then she reached her arms back and pulled me toward her, holding me tight against her back. I was so surprised I didn't know what to do. My first thought was to ask questions. What happened? Why was she here? Where was her boyfriend? But something about the way she was holding on to me told me that questions weren't what she needed right now. She was still in her damp clothes, and I could feel her shaking a little. Not from being cold, but from whatever was making her so upset. Her grip around my arms was firm, like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. I could hear her breathing, slow and careful, like she was trying not to start crying again. I put my laptop on the nightstand and turned off my desk lamp. The room went dark except for the streetlight outside my window, which cast long shadows across the wall. The rain was still coming down pretty hard, and every now and then I could hear a car driving by on the wet street below. We lay there like that for what felt like a really long time. I didn't move because I didn't want to disturb whatever comfort she was finding. Sometimes she would tighten her hold on me, and I could tell she was fighting back tears. Other times she would relax a little and her breathing would get deeper. I started thinking about all the times I'd seen Maya over the years. She was always the strong one in her family, the one who had everything figured out. She graduated college with honors, got a good job right away, and seemed to handle whatever life threw at her with this amazing smile and positive attitude. Seeing her like this, so vulnerable and hurt, made me realize that even the strongest people sometimes need someone to hold on to. The weird thing was, it didn't feel awkward at all. You'd think having your friend's sister suddenly appear in your bed would be strange, but it felt completely natural. Like this was exactly where she was supposed to be at this moment. Maybe it was because I'd known her for so long, or maybe it was because we both understood that this wasn't about anything romantic. This was about one human being needing comfort from another. I could feel her starting to relax as the minutes passed. Her grip on my arms loosened just a little and her breathing became more regular. The shaking stopped. At some point I thought she might have fallen asleep, but then she would move slightly or adjust her position and I knew she was still awake. Outside, the rain was finally starting to slow down. The steady drumming on the window became lighter, more like gentle tapping. The street got quieter too, with fewer cars passing by. It felt like the whole world was settling down for the night and we were safe and warm in our little bubble. I found myself thinking about my own recent breakup and how lonely I'd been feeling. Not just missing my ex-girlfriend, but missing that feeling of being needed by someone, of being the person someone turns to when things get tough. Tonight, for whatever reason, Maya was here. I was that person for her. As I lay there holding her, or maybe she was holding me, I realized that sometimes the most important conversations happen without any words at all. Sometimes just being present with someone, sharing the same space in the same quiet moment, says everything that needs to be said. The last thing I remember before drifting off to sleep was the feeling of Maya's breathing becoming slow and steady, and thinking that whatever had brought her to my door tonight, whatever had made her so sad, we would figure it out together in the morning. Right now, this quiet moment of connection was enough. I woke up slowly, feeling warmer than usual. For a second I forgot why, until I felt Maya's arm still wrapped around me. The morning light was coming through my blinds, making soft lines across my bedroom wall. The rain had stopped sometime during the night and everything felt peaceful and quiet. Maya was still holding me close, but I could tell from her breathing that she was awake too. Neither of us moved for the longest time. It was like we both knew that once we started talking, this safe little bubble we'd created would have to pop, and the real world would come rushing back in. I could hear birds singing outside my window, which was strange because I never usually noticed them. Maybe I was just more aware of everything this morning. The smell of coffee from the apartment next door. The sound of someone starting their car down the street. The feeling of another person next to me who needed me to be there. Finally, Maya loosened her grip just a little bit. I turned over slowly to face her, and that's when I really saw how tired she looked. Her eyes were still a bit red and swollen, and her hair was messy from sleeping in my bed with it still damp from the rain. But there was something different about her face now. Less desperate, maybe, like she'd found some kind of peace during the night. "Thank you," she said quietly. Those were the first words either of us had spoken since she'd arrived. Her voice sounded rough and scratchy, probably from all the crying she'd done before coming over. "For what?" I asked, though I think I already knew. For not asking questions last night. For just letting me be here. I nodded, not really knowing what to say to that. We lay there looking at each other for a few more minutes, and I could see her trying to decide how much she wanted to tell me. I wanted to know what had happened to make her so upset, but I also didn't want to push her if she wasn't ready to talk about it. "Do you want some coffee?" I finally asked. "I make pretty terrible coffee, but it's better than nothing." She smiled for the first time since she'd walked into my room. It was a small smile, but it was real. "That sounds perfect." We got up slowly and I gave her one of my old college t-shirts and some sweatpants to change into since her clothes were still damp. While she was in the bathroom, I started the coffee maker and looked around my small kitchen, trying to see it through her eyes. It wasn't much to look at. A tiny table with 2 chairs, a refrigerator covered in takeout menus, and counters that probably needed cleaning. When Maya came out wearing my clothes, she looked so much younger than her 26 years. The oversized shirt made her seem small and vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. She sat down at my kitchen table and wrapped her hands around the coffee mug I gave her, like she was trying to warm herself up from the inside. "His name is Ryan," she said suddenly, staring down at her coffee. "We were supposed to get married in 2 months. I felt my stomach drop. Maya was engaged? I had no idea. Jake had never mentioned it, and Maya hadn't said anything the last time I'd seen her at a family dinner a few weeks ago. "Were?" I asked gently. She took a sip of coffee and made a face. "You weren't kidding about making terrible coffee." But then she took another sip anyway. "I went to his apartment yesterday to surprise him. I had this whole plan. I was going to bring dinner and we were going to finalize some wedding details." She paused and I could see her hands starting to shake a little around the mug. When I got there, I used my key to let myself in. I heard voices coming from his bedroom and I thought maybe he was on a work call or something. But when I got closer, I realized she didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. I understood what had happened, and my heart broke for her. I just stood there in his hallway for I don't know how long, she continued, listening to him with someone else. In our bed. The bed where we'd talked about our future together just the night before. I wanted to say something, but what do you say to that? Sorry seemed too small. Everything happens for a reason seemed too cruel. So I just listened and let her keep talking. The worst part wasn't even catching him. It was realizing that part of me wasn't even that surprised. There had been signs for weeks, maybe months. He was always working late, always on his phone, always making excuses for why we couldn't spend time together. But I ignored all of it because I wanted so badly for everything to be perfect. She looked up at me then, and I could see anger mixing with the sadness in her eyes. I planned this whole beautiful wedding. I picked out flowers and a dress and sent invitations to everyone we know. I spent hours dreaming about our life together, about the house we'd buy and the kids we'd have. And the whole time her voice broke and she put her head in her hands. I got up from my chair and knelt down next to her, putting my hand on her shoulder. You didn't deserve that, I said. None of it was your fault. But I feel so stupid, she whispered. Everyone's going to know. All our friends, my family, his family. How do I tell them that the wedding is off because I caught my future husband cheating on me? How do I face all those people who were excited for us? I thought about that for a minute. Maybe the people who really care about you won't focus on the embarrassing part. Maybe they'll just be glad you found out before you married him instead of after. She looked at me like she hadn't thought of it that way. I couldn't go home last night. My parents would have asked so many questions and I wasn't ready to explain everything. Jake was working and I couldn't think of anywhere else to go where I'd feel safe. Why here? I asked. Not that I mind at all. I just want to understand. Maya was quiet for a long time, thinking about her answer. Do you remember that time in college when I had that panic attack during finals week? You and Jake found me crying in the library, and you both just sat with me until I felt better. You didn't try to fix everything or give me a bunch of advice. You just stayed. I did remember that night. It was during our junior year, and Maya had been pushing herself too hard with classes and work and everything else. We'd found her having a complete breakdown over her textbooks. Last night, when I was driving around trying to figure out what to do, I kept thinking about that moment, how safe I felt with you both there. And since Jake was at work, I guess my brain just knew to come here. She reached over and took my hand. You've always been the calm one, you know that? Even when everything around you is crazy, you just stay steady. I needed that steadiness last night. I squeezed her hand gently. You can stay here as long as you need to. We'll figure everything out together, okay? For the first time since she'd walked into my room, Maya looked like she really believed things might be okay. The coffee was terrible. The morning was strange and her whole life had just fallen apart. But sitting there in my little kitchen, holding hands across my wobbly table, something felt right about the world again. 3 days had passed since Maya showed up at my door and we'd settled into this weird but comfortable routine. She'd sleep in my bed while I took the couch, though neither of us talked about it much. In the mornings, we'd have coffee together and she'd help me with some of my design projects. She was actually really good at coming up with creative ideas, and having her input made my work better. Maya seemed to be getting stronger each day. She'd called in sick to her job and spent most of her time either helping me or just sitting quietly, reading books from my small collection. Sometimes she'd get sad and need to cry for a while, but she was starting to smile more often. Real smiles, not the fake ones she'd been forcing for months without realizing it. We were sitting on my couch Thursday afternoon, both working on our laptops, when someone started pounding on my door. Not knocking politely, but really banging hard like they were angry about something. Maya and I looked at each other and I could see the color drain from her face. It's probably just the mailman with a package, I said. But even I didn't believe that. The mailman didn't pound on doors like he was trying to break them down. The pounding got louder and more urgent. Then I heard a voice shouting through the door. Maya, I know you're in there. Open the door. Maya's whole body went tense beside me. It's Ryan, she whispered, like saying his name too loud would make everything worse. How did he find you here? I asked Jake, she said miserably. Ryan probably called him at work and said he was worried about me. Jake wouldn't have known about what happened, the shouting continued. Maya, please. We need to talk. I've been looking everywhere for you. I could see Maya starting to panic. Her breathing was getting faster and her hands were shaking. This was the first time she'd had to face him since that night and she wasn't ready. I wasn't going to let him force her into a conversation she didn't want to have. Stay here, I told her, getting up from the couch. You don't have to see him if you don't want to. But before I could reach the door, I heard a key turning in the lock. Jake's key. A few seconds later, the door opened and 2 men walked in. Jake looked confused and worried, still wearing his hospital scrubs from his night shift. Behind him was a guy I'd never met but knew had to be Ryan. Ryan was taller than I'd expected, with messy brown hair and clothes that looked like he'd been sleeping in them. His eyes were bloodshot and desperate, like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw Maya sitting on my couch in my clothes, his face went through about 5 different emotions at once. "There you are," he said, like he'd just found a lost pet. "I've been going crazy looking for you. Why haven't you answered my calls?" Jake looked back and forth between Maya and Ryan, starting to piece together what was happening. "Maya, what's going on? Ryan said you disappeared and he was worried sick." Maya stood up slowly and I could see her pulling herself together, finding that inner strength she'd been building over the past few days. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. "I didn't disappear, Jake. I left." "There's a difference." Ryan stepped toward her and I instinctively moved between them. "Left?" "Maya, baby, whatever you think happened, we can work through it. We're getting married in 2 months. You can't just run away like this." "Don't call me baby," Maya said, and there was steel in her voice I'd never heard before. "And don't pretend you don't know exactly why I left." Jake was looking more confused by the minute. "Someone want to tell me what's happening here?" Maya took a deep breath. "I went to Ryan's apartment Tuesday night to surprise him. Instead, he surprised me. With another woman. In our bed." The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Jake's face went from confused to angry in about 2 seconds. Ryan looked like he was trying to come up with an explanation that would make everything okay. "Maya, it's not what you think," Ryan started, but she held up her hand to stop him. "It's exactly what I think, and what I saw, and what I heard. It was a mistake," Ryan said desperately. "It didn't mean anything. We can get through this. People make mistakes all the time." I watched Maya's face as he spoke, and I could see her getting stronger with every word. Like each excuse he made was proving to her that leaving had been the right choice. "You're right," she said calmly. "People do make mistakes. My mistake was ignoring all the signs that you weren't ready to be married. My mistake was planning a wedding with someone who was still shopping around for something better." Ryan's desperation was turning into anger. "So you just decided to punish me by running off with him?" He pointed at me like I was the problem. "I didn't run off with anyone," Maya said firmly. "I came to a friend's house because I needed somewhere safe to think, and to grieve for the relationship I thought we had." "A friend?" Ryan's voice got louder. "You're wearing his clothes, Maya. You think I'm stupid?" That's when I'd had enough. "She's wearing my clothes because hers were soaked from the rain when she got here at 2 a.m., crying and heartbroken because of what you did to her. She's been sleeping in my bed while I sleep on the couch because she needed comfort from someone she trusts. If you can't understand the difference between that and what you were doing with someone else, then you don't deserve her." Ryan took a step toward me, and for a second I thought he might try to start a fight. But Jake moved between us, putting his hand on Ryan's chest. "That's enough," Jake said firmly. "Ryan, I think you should leave." "I'm not leaving without Maya," Ryan said stubbornly. "Yes, you are," Maya said, and her voice was stronger than I'd ever heard it. "You don't get to decide what I do anymore. You lost that right when you decided to cheat on me." She walked over to where Ryan was standing and looked him directly in the eyes. "The wedding is off. I'll pack up my things from your apartment when you're not there. Please don't contact me again." "You can't be serious," Ryan said, but I could see in his face that he was starting to realize she meant it. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," Maya replied. "What you did showed me who you really are, and who I really am. I deserve better than someone who would treat me like that." Ryan looked around the room like he was hoping someone would help him change her mind. When he realized that wasn't going to happen, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Fine," he said bitterly, "but don't come crying to me when you realize you made a huge mistake." "Don't expect me to take you back." Maya actually smiled at that. "I won't," she said simply. After Ryan left, slamming the door behind him, Jake apologized for bringing him over. He said he really had thought Maya was just missing and that Ryan was genuinely worried about her. "It's okay," Maya told her brother. "I needed to face him eventually. I just wasn't expecting it to happen so soon." "Are you okay?" Jake asked, still looking concerned. Maya thought about that for a minute. Yeah, she said, and she sounded surprised. I think I really am okay. After Jake left for home to get some sleep, Maya and I sat back down on the couch. She was quiet for a long time, processing everything that had just happened. How do you feel? I asked. Free, she said without hesitation. For the first time in months, maybe years, I feel completely free. Is that weird? Not at all, I said. You just stood up for yourself in a way you probably never have before. That's got to feel pretty good. She leaned back against the couch cushions and closed her eyes. 3 days ago, I thought my life was falling apart. Now I realize it was just making room for something better. What was supposed to be a few days turned into weeks, and honestly, neither of us minded. Maya and I had found this easy rhythm together that felt as natural as breathing. She'd wake up before me most mornings and have coffee ready by the time I stumbled into the kitchen. I'd work on my design projects while she looked for jobs online, and somehow we never got in each other's way. My small apartment had never felt more like a real home. Maya brought this energy to the place that I didn't even know was missing. She'd rearranged my furniture to make better use of the space, added some plants that actually stayed alive under her care, and somehow made my terrible cooking taste decent just by being there to share it with. You know you're a disaster in the kitchen, right? She said one evening, watching me try to make pasta without burning it. This was about 2 weeks after the whole thing with Ryan, and Maya was looking more like herself every day. Better than herself, actually. There was this confidence about her now that hadn't been there before. I've survived this long, I said, stirring the sauce that was definitely sticking to the bottom of the pan. Barely, she laughed, gently pushing me aside to take over. My grandmother would roll over in her grave if she knew I was letting someone ruin perfectly good tomatoes like this. I watched her work, and it hit me how comfortable we'd become with each other. 3 weeks ago, Maya was practically a stranger crying in my bed. Now she was taking over my kitchen like she'd always belonged there, and it felt completely right. Can I ask you something? I said, leaning against the counter while she fixed my cooking disaster. Sure. Are you happy? I mean, really happy? Not just okay or getting by, but actually happy. She stopped stirring and thought about it for a minute. You know what? I think I am. Not about Ryan or the whole mess with the wedding, but about everything else. About figuring out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone's perfect girlfriend. About having time to think about what I actually want instead of what I thought I was supposed to want. She paused and looked at me. Is that weird? That I'm happier now than I was when I thought my life was perfect? Not weird at all, I said. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to us is having our plans fall apart. Maya smiled at that. Easy for you to say. Your life didn't explode in front of half the city. Maybe not all at once, but it's been falling apart piece by piece for years. I've been coasting, you know? Taking whatever work comes my way. Living in this tiny apartment, not really building toward anything. Watching you rebuild your whole life from scratch is making me realize how stuck I've been. That was true. Having Maya around had shown me how small my world had become. She attacked every day like it was full of possibilities, while I'd been going through the motions of living without really living. So what are you going to do about it? She asked, turning back to the stove. I don't know yet, but I'm starting to think about it, which is more than I was doing before. A few days later, Maya came home from a job interview practically glowing with excitement. She'd been applying to marketing positions all over the city, but this one was different. This one was in Seattle. It's perfect, she said, pacing around my living room like she couldn't contain her energy. It's a startup company, and they want someone to build their whole marketing department from scratch. I'd have complete creative control, and the salary is better than anything I've ever made. I felt this weird mix of pride and panic watching her get so excited. Pride because she deserved something amazing after everything she'd been through. Panic because Seattle was 800 miles away. That sounds incredible, I said, and I meant it. When would you start? If I get it, 6 weeks. They want to move fast because they're launching a new product line in the fall. 6 weeks. I did the math in my head. That would be right around when her original wedding date was supposed to be. Instead of walking down the aisle to marry someone who didn't appreciate her, she might be starting the job of her dreams in a new city. Do you want it? I asked. I think I do, she said, sitting down next to me on the couch. But I'm scared. It would mean leaving everyone I know, starting completely over in a place where I don't know anyone. You started over here, I pointed out, and look how well that turned out. That's different. I had you. Something about the way she said that made my chest feel tight. Over the past few weeks, I'd gotten so used to having Maya around that I'd stopped thinking about her eventually leaving. But of course she was going to leave. She was building a new life, and that life was bigger than my small apartment and quiet routine. If this job is what you want, you should take it, I said. You can't make decisions based on fear. What if I'm making a mistake? What if I get there and realize I gave up everything good in my life for a job that doesn't work out? I turned to face her fully. Maya, you're one of the strongest people I know. You walked away from a relationship that was wrong for you, even though it meant giving up a wedding and a life you'd already planned. You've been rebuilding yourself from scratch for weeks, and you're better now than you were before. You can handle whatever Seattle throws at you. She was quiet for a long time, thinking. What about us? She asked finally. What about us? This, she gestured around the apartment. Living together, helping each other, being there for each other. I don't want to lose that. You won't lose it, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Real friendship doesn't disappear just because of distance, but it changes things. Yeah, it does. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we both need to see what we can do on our own before we figure out what comes next. Maya got the job. The call came on a Friday afternoon while we were both working at my kitchen table. I watched her face light up as she listened to the offer, and I felt genuinely happy for her even though my heart was breaking a little. After she hung up, we just sat there looking at each other. I got it, she said unnecessarily. I heard. Congratulations. Thank you. For everything. For letting me fall apart in your bed and helping me put myself back together. For believing I could do this even when I didn't believe it myself. Thank you for showing me what it looks like to be brave, I said. And for making my terrible coffee every morning. We both laughed, but there was sadness mixed in with the joy. Change is hard even when it's the right thing to do. We still have 6 weeks, Maya said. Then let's make them count. Those last 6 weeks flew by faster than any time in my life. We did everything we could think of in the city, as if we were tourists trying to see it all before we had to leave. We went to museums and concerts and tried restaurants we'd never been to. Maya helped me redesign my whole portfolio and apply for bigger, better clients. I helped her practice for interviews and pick out professional clothes for her new job. But mostly we just spent time together. Talking late into the night about our dreams and fears, cooking elaborate meals that sometimes turned out terrible, watching old movies on my small TV, building memories that would have to last us when we were 800 miles apart. The morning Maya was supposed to leave for Seattle, I woke up to find her side of the bed empty. For a second I panicked, thinking maybe she'd already left without saying goodbye. Then I heard sounds coming from the kitchen and smelled coffee brewing. I found her sitting at my small table, already dressed and ready to go, with 2 cups of coffee waiting. Her suitcases were lined up by the front door like soldiers ready for battle. She'd been packed for days, but seeing everything actually ready to go made it real in a way that hit me harder than I'd expected. You're up early, I said, though I could see from the window that the sun was just starting to rise. Couldn't sleep, she admitted. My flight's not until this afternoon, but I've been awake since 4 just thinking about everything. I sat down across from her and took a sip of coffee. It was perfect, like always. Maya had figured out how to make my cheap coffee maker produce something that actually tasted good, and I had no idea how I was going to go back to making it myself. Having second thoughts? I asked. Not about the job, she said quickly. The job is right. I know it is. But leaving here, leaving you? She trailed off and stared down at her coffee. Hey, I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. Look at me. When she did, I could see she was fighting back tears. Not sad tears, but the complicated kind that come when you're doing something that's right and hard at the same time. 6 months ago, if someone had told you that you'd be moving to Seattle for your dream job, what would you have said? That they were crazy. 6 months ago, I was planning a wedding and picking out china patterns. And now? She smiled through the tears. Now I'm about to get on a plane to start the most exciting job of my life in a city I've never lived in, and I'm terrified and thrilled at the same time. That's growth, I said. That's you becoming who you were always supposed to be. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking our coffee and watching the morning light get brighter outside my window. I was memorizing everything about this moment. The way Maya looked with her hair pulled back and wearing the professional outfit she'd picked out for her first day of work. The sound of cars starting to move around outside as the city woke up. The feeling of being completely present with someone who had changed my life without either of us planning it. Can I tell you something? Maya said eventually. Of course. That night I came here, when I slipped into your bed, I wasn't just running from Ryan. I was running from myself, from the person I'd become in that relationship. Someone small and anxious and always trying to be perfect for someone else. She paused and looked around my small apartment. Living here with you these past few months, I remembered who I really am. Not Ryan's girlfriend or someone's future wife, but just Maya. And Maya turns out to be pretty strong and capable and ready for adventure. She always was, I said. You just needed a safe place to remember. That's what this was, you know. The safest place I've ever been. Not because nothing bad could happen here, but because I knew that whatever happened, you'd be there to help me handle it. I felt my throat getting tight with emotion. You gave me something too, you know. You showed me what it looks like to be truly brave. To take risks and rebuild your life when it's not working. Before you got here, I was just existing. Now I feel like I'm actually living. Maya stood up and came around the table to sit next to me. Without saying anything, she wrapped her arms around me and held me close. Just like that first night, but different. That night she'd been broken and desperate. This morning she was whole and strong and ready for whatever came next. I love you, she said quietly. Not in a romantic way, but in the deepest friendship way possible. You saved my life, and I'll never forget that. I love you too, I said, and I meant it completely. And I didn't save your life. I just gave you a place to save yourself. We held each other for a long time, and I realized this was how real love works sometimes. Not with passion or drama, but with quiet support and deep understanding, with being exactly what someone needs when they need it most. Later that morning, I drove Maya to the airport. We didn't talk much on the way there, both of us lost in our own thoughts. At the departure gate, our goodbye was simple. A long hug, promises to call each other, and that was it. No dramatic speeches or tearful declarations. Just two people who had shared something important saying see you later instead of goodbye. I watched her walk through security until I couldn't see her anymore. And then I drove home to my quiet apartment that suddenly felt too big and too small at the same time. The first few weeks after Maya left were harder than I'd expected. I'd gotten so used to having her around that everything felt off. My coffee tasted terrible again. My apartment felt empty despite having more space. I caught myself setting out 2 plates for dinner and then having to put one back. But slowly, things started to change. Maya called me twice a week to tell me about her new job and her new city. She loved the work and was already making friends with her co-workers. She'd found a small apartment near the water and was learning to cook new things in her tiny kitchen. And I started making changes too. I applied for bigger freelance projects and actually got them. I cleaned out my apartment and got rid of things I didn't need. I started going to places Maya and I had discovered together, but now I was exploring them on my own. 3 months after Maya left, I got a package in the mail. Inside was a photo of her at some work event, smiling bigger than I'd ever seen her smile. She was wearing a confident expression that looked like it belonged completely on her face. On the back, she'd written, "Thank you for giving me a place to fall apart so I could build myself back up. Your friendship saved my soul." I put the photo on my refrigerator and smiled every time I saw it. Maya had found exactly what she was looking for in Seattle. And somehow, by helping her find her new life, I'd started to build a better one for myself too. 6 months later, Maya came back to visit for Jake's birthday. When she walked into my apartment, it was like no time had passed at all. We fell right back into our easy conversation and comfortable silences. But we were both different people than we'd been when she left. Stronger, more confident, more sure of who we were and what we wanted. "Look at you," she said, looking around my apartment, which I'd completely reorganized and redecorated. "This place actually looks like a home now." "Look at you," I said back. "You're practically glowing." "Seattle's been good to me," she said. "Really good. I got promoted last month and I'm dating someone new. Someone who appreciates how awesome I am instead of making me feel like I need to be different." "That's amazing," I said. And I meant it completely. "What about you? Any new developments in the love department?" "Actually, yeah. I've been seeing someone for a few weeks. It's early, but it feels really good, really healthy." We spent the weekend catching up and visiting all our old favorite places. It was wonderful, but it was also clear that we'd both moved on to new chapters of our lives. The intense closeness we'd shared during those months she lived with me had evolved into something different but just as valuable. On her last night in town, Maya slipped into my bed one more time. But this time it was just to talk, both of us lying on top of the covers looking at the ceiling like we used to do. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't caught Ryan that night?" she asked. "Sometimes, but I don't think it would have changed anything in the long run. You were already outgrowing that relationship. You just didn't know it yet. Maybe you're right. Maybe everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. Maybe it did." We talked until almost dawn about our new lives and old memories and dreams for the future. When the sun started to come up, Maya got ready to head to the airport. "Thank you," she said one more time as she was leaving. "For everything." "Thank you too," I said. "For showing me what real friendship looks like, and for making the best coffee I've ever had." She laughed and hugged me goodbye, and then she was gone again. But this time it felt like a natural ending instead of a loss. We'd given each other exactly what we needed when we needed it most, and now we were both strong enough to build beautiful lives on our own.